industry's most prestigious service award. Hillcrest Wrecker is recognized for meeting on-time performance, expressed customer satisfaction, and overall professionalism. If you need a tow, call Hillcrest Wrecker, 843-0052.
Easton's incredible half-price suit blowout is on now. Our entire inventory of suits priced $3.99 to $6.99 is now half price. We have over 850 suits to choose from, featuring the finest suits by Corbin, Peerless, and Country Britches, all at half price. Our knowledgeable staff can help you find your fit and style, all at incredible savings during Easton's half-price suit sale. The finest clothing, the best service, Easton's Limited, 839 Massachusetts in downtown Lawrence.
Brown Shoe Fit Company, the same.
We're at this news conference that NASA is going to provide for us, and we're also going to get new color pictures of Mars. Fascinating, fabulous stuff. We haven't seen Mars ever this clearly before, and anytime you get a new one, I mean, it's just like seeing something for the first time.
Absolutely. Kevin has a question. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, I was wondering, when they take the pictures of the rocks from the probe, how will they know what type of rock it is by just looking at the pictures?
Well, they're doing more than taking a picture of it. They got this machine that I call the super sniffer, and this machine goes over to the rock and goes, you know, like that to it, and sucks up some of the stuff that is on the rock. And if you combine the picture and the color picture and the stuff that they suck off of it, they'll be able to get a pretty good idea of how old it is, where it came from, stuff like that. And it's going to take a month to analyze all this stuff, Kevin, but it's fabulous stuff, and they're getting all the raw material right now.
Norm Reitzel, as you know, we're in the CompuServe forum.
Yep.
So Matthew is with us, and he's monitoring the forum. Folks are in the, let's see, Norm Reitzel was in the forum last night and has this question. Okay, Pathfinder's doing chemistry on the rocks, but isn't looking for life per se, but is it essentially looking to try to find out, where all that water went? Is that how you would describe it?
That's one of the big questions it's trying to find out. Susan, the first pictures they got on the ground showed that this was a big riverbed where the Pathfinder bounced down inside this giant beach ball. And what they have done in the past 2 days, the camera was right down at ground level. They have put the camera up on top of a mast. It just went nee, 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 so it's up about human eye level. And now they got a different view at this river bottom. And it turns out to be much more extensive than they thought. And the thing that they have announced in the past 24 hours is there was a flood on this plain that was 1,000 feet deep. Now, I've been to the Midwest to floods. There's never been a flood like this, other than the one in the Bible where Noah got on the ark. Maybe they had one on Mars that they're going to be able to prove, and maybe that means it's possible that, that there was one on Earth like the one that's described in the Bible. Very interesting stuff.
They were also speculating about the Great Flood in the CompuServe forum last night. Absolutely. This is one of the things why covering this is so much fun, because you can really talk about all kinds of things. I want you to meet Elaine. Elaine is in charge of the Young Astronauts program at your school. She just happened to be in the audience from New Jersey. Elaine, what school are you from?
Penns Grove Middle School.
Okay, go ahead. You've got a question for John?
Yes. What technology has been developed to help the rover know when it's come across a cliff or an object so it doesn't fall off the cliff or go around?
What the rover does, it's got these two TV cameras that are eyes on it that are not much use because it takes 7 minutes for the picture to get from the TV cameras down to Earth. And so instead of that, what it's using is laser beams. And these laser beams are right between the TV camera eyes, and they zap out in front 10 or 20 feet. And if the laser beams come back the same way they were zapped out, everybody, the computer on board knows it's smooth sailing. If the laser beam comes back and it comes to a different detector from the one that sent it, then they know there's something in the way. And because they've got 6 or 8 of these arrayed along the front, by the basis they come back, they'll know what it is. And according to Donna Shirley, NASA's brain in charge of exploration of Mars,
and who will be joining us.
Oh, good, good.
Today.
This thing uses bug logic. They have created artificial bug intelligence and put it into the computer on the rover. When a roach comes into your kitchen, I don't know if it happens at your house.
Not in Elaine's kitchen.
No. The bug will come up to something like the salt shaker, and instead of looking at it and going around it, the bug will bounce into it and then say, uh-oh, something there, and turn sideways and go that way. And that's the logic in the computer on the rover. So it acts like a bug.
Question here from Carl Swanson, and he's in the forum right now. Question: the surface appears to have been eroded by liquid. What makes them say it was water?
That's a good question. Joy Chen, who's one of our colleagues, asked me the same question in our computer this morning. They're not sure, except that what they think they see in the polar regions of Mars appears to be water. And what else could it be, I guess, you know? And they'll find out eventually, but they don't know for sure it was water. They just... You know, we're looking at Mars with human eyes. When the first probes came to Mars, there was a camera on the surface. It looked up at the sky, expecting to see blue sky, and the sky was pink. And everybody went crazy. What's the sky doing pink? Because they assumed it would be blue. And it's the same reason they assumed the liquid on Mars was water. But it could be something else. And until we know, we won't know. But we got something up there to tell us, and maybe it will.
This is fabulous.
It's out of this world in every sense.
Carl Swanson, by the way, says, "Hi, Commander Susan," so I'll also translate that to you. Hi, Commander John. Jackie O'Donnell has a follow-up question for you. If there's no oxygen on Mars or very little, how's it
Susan,
resting?
The news conference is starting. Matt Golombek is coming up on the TV, the most excited human being I've ever met. Look at him as he begins the briefing from NASA.
Continue to have spacecraft in excellent health. We have a rover in excellent health. And we have all instruments in excellent health. We had 2 downlink sessions yesterday, one in the afternoon at about 4 for about a half an hour. That was the start of the day on Mars. And one at about 11:30 p.m., which was sort of the late afternoon on Mars. From those 2 downlink sessions, the transponder working at 100 bits per second. We returned over 50 megabits of data from the surface of Mars again. To this date, we have returned 1,575 images from the surface of Mars. We returned the entire monster pan, which in our previous expectations took us a week to get down. And we have actually started receiving the insurance pan, the lossless panorama, from the pre-deployed state as well. We retracted the APXS from Barnacle Bill. We moved away from the rock. We backed up. We did a series of soil mechanics measurements yesterday where we rotated the rover wheel and actually dug the wheel in and plowed forward. We did a wheel abrasion experiment, and we moved toward Yogi and did a series of high-resolution forward stereo views of this very interesting rock. Today, we plan to do a whole variety of imaging experiments, including a series of multispectral spots. We plan to move, we will be imaging Barnacle Bill in much more detail than we have so far. We will look at a series of broken crusts that we saw yesterday. We will also look at Scooby-Doo in some detail. And Casper, don't forget Casper. We expect the rover to move to Crab to the left and move to the southeast side of Yogi. To get a better look, we will take a forward stereo shot of Yogi in hopefully better light, and then we will turn the rover around to where the rear is pointing at Yogi, and we will take a rear color image of Yogi. And then we will place the APXS down against the soil in preparation for trying to get the APX up against Yogi the next day. We will continue to get meteorology data from the surface of Mars, and we will start a rather aggressive series of dust opacity measurements and nighttime observations of the sky of Mars in preparation for synergistic measurements with the Hubble Space Telescope, which start tonight and then go for the next 3 days. Phil James and his team at the University of Toledo will be imaging our hemisphere of Mars using Hubble to see if we still have this ambiguity of bright white clouds versus what we see down on the surface, which is what we saw throughout the Viking experience. And we should be getting down the insurance pan as well. We have decided to delete the morning transmit session for today in preparation of trying to recharge the battery. The battery on the lander is a rechargeable battery. If you don't recharge it every so many days, it degrades in performance, and we wish it to remain healthy for as long as we can. We've decided to delete the morning half-hour transmit session, which takes a heavy toll on the energy usage of the battery. The good news is our remarkable engineers have figured out a way to get 2 downlink sessions in the afternoon of roughly total 3 hours duration, and so we expect to be returning an unprecedented 85 megabits of data from the surface of Mars tomorrow. So even though we are not doing one session, we get a net gain. Here today to talk about the science that we're beginning to see. The more we look at this site, the more we are immensely happy at the variety of materials that are there. We see a whole wide variety of surface finds. We do see what looks like to be a wide variety of rock types as well, and I could have only hoped this in my wildest dreams. Here to talk about the data we've gotten yesterday is Rudy Reeder, who will show the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer of Barnacle Bill. I should note that at this point that this is an historic moment. We have never before gotten a chemical analysis measurement of a rock on Mars. Following that will be Hap McSween, who will discuss how Barnacle Bill relates to the suite of rocks that we think we already have from Mars, the remarkable SNCC meteorites, and how they relate to rocks here we have on Earth, and what kind of rock this might actually be. Following that, Peter Smith will talk about the results of the monster pan. We have all of that down, and we've begun to start to put it together and look at the colors and the stereo as well. And that's a remarkable data set. Followed by Nick Thomas, who will show you imaging of Deimos, the first ever image of Deimos from the surface of Mars, images of the sun, images of the sunrise as well. And finally, for the weather report on Mars, Jeff Barnes. I'll turn it over to Rudy.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning. Can I have the first picture, please? Okay, this is the APX spectrometer mounted on Sojourner on Earth, and the next one should show you how it looked on Mars when it was taking data from Barnacle Bill. Next one, please. The upper image shows you the rock that we have taken data on, and the lower image shows you the position of Sojourner. Unfortunately, you don't clearly see the APX docked against the rock. There's a left eye picture where it is better visible. That much about the scenery. Now, as far as the data are concerned, the whole project went so smooth so far that many people might have been taken to believe that this is a hoax. There was a film made many years ago, I think it was called Capricorn, where NASA was putting up... Well, we can assure you it's not a hoax. If I can get the next image. Here is a diagram of elemental ratios and the many data points plotted in there. They represent basically samples from Earth, and if I could learn how to operate this, I again can't. Can you? Oh, here it is. So this is terrestrial samples lined up here. This collection of triangles is data from meteorites believed to come from Mars. Down here you have one data point which is Viking soil, the soil measured by Viking, and the red dot is Barnacle Bill. We are on Mars. We get excellent data. We have especially good X-ray data, and that makes my colleague Tom Economou from the University of Chicago very happy. It was mainly his task to build that X-ray channel. The next slide will show you an example of Barnacle Bill's X-ray spectra and how Tom has been preliminarily decomposing it. We have actually not had such good data in the laboratory. That's mainly due to the fact that on Mars it's much colder than we ever bothered to cool the instrument when we took spectra in the lab. We have slight problems understanding the alpha data. The data are also excellent. but they include...
Well, while we're looking at this very unusual and very hard for me to understand diagram of what Barnacle Bill is made of, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with the live pictures of Mars in just a minute as Talk Back Live continues.
There's a lot of work involved in retrieving the information. The next slide will show you.
Why are AT&T, MCI, and Sprint charging you when you're answering the door or having coffee? Why are they still charging you for one call when you're making another? Whatever you do after you hang up, they keep charging you.
AT&T, MCI, and Sprint still round up to the next minute for calls you make from home. LCI won't do that. Call LCI and start saving right away.
Because why should you be charged when you're walking your dog?
The good old days of supermarket shopping, when nothing stood between you and your next meal. Nothing. But today, there are materials that help lock out harmful contaminants and reduce spoilage, keeping us safe and the food we eat fresh. Plastics make it possible. So now, the rest is history.
Imagine if getting gas were more like mid-flight refueling. We have at the new, faster, easier Shell. Shell, moving at the speed of life.
It's kind of a free-for-all.
Hey, it's good to see you.
How are you?
I mean, in between, like,
Something smells great.
Anyone for wine?
Wine's
Fetzer.
great. I think I like the red.
Here, hold on, let me set the tables.
These are the days.
I hope you guys like garlic. You've been tasting.
Enjoy the wine.
Hey, what did you think of that?
Fetzer Vineyards.
Super Bowl Sunday, America watched another dream come true.
10 million?
But you don't have to wait until January to win. August 14th, Publishers Clearinghouse will surprise a new $1 million winner live on TV. Enter now and it could be you.
Welcome back to Talk Back Live. We're going back into NASA's briefing on the latest pictures from the surface of planet Mars. Hap McSween is an expert on meteorites and Earth rocks, and he is looking at Martian rocks to see how they're the same or how they're different. Let's listen.
Dirt clods in there, or possibly small rocks. I think they're probably dirt clods. But it's a pretty clean analysis site. Then here's Barnacle Bill, which was A3. And notice particularly that the left-hand side of Barnacle Bill has some red dust on it, which complicates tremendously any interpretation of the chemistry that you get, because the APX only analyzes the very surface layer. But the right-hand side is very dark and very clean. And we hoped that the rover team was going to be able to put the sensor head on the right-hand side, and that the arrowhead marks the spot as best we can tell. So I guess this proves that luck will beat skill and cunning every time. So we think we have a nice clean rock surface is the point, and I think we can, at least we can interpret it unambiguously from the perspective of not having too much dust contamination. Next slide, please. First, I want to show you the A2 analysis, which is the soil analysis. And one of the difficulties with chemical analyses is getting absolute concentrations, absolute values. And it's often easier to get an accurate portrayal of what's there if you do a ratio of two elements. And so all of these elements on the bottom of this diagram are divided by the concentration of the element silicon. And what you see here is the red squares represent the average of the Viking soil analyses, and the yellow dots represent the soil analysis at this site. And can that be moved up? There's an iron dot at the top of the figure that isn't showing. It's way, trust me, it's right off scale, right up here. But all of these things are incredibly good matches. In fact, the only thing that differs a little bit is sulfur. The sulfur in this soil is a little less than the sulfur in the average Viking analysis, but the sulfur in the Viking soils bounced around. So what this means is we have now analyzed, we have soil analyses from 3 different places on Mars, and they're virtually identical. Okay, now let's look at the rock. The next slide, please. Again, these are element ratios. This is a ratio of calcium to silicon on the vertical axis and iron to silicon on the horizontal axis. And these 3 elements are all determined with high precision by APX. The APX can reach these very easily. I've shown on here in blue a field for basalts on the Earth, the most common lava type that forms the ocean basins, the floor of the oceans, and a lot of the continents. And then there are some blue dots here labeled ultramafic rocks. These are rocks that form if a basalt starts to crystallize and you remove those crystals and make a rock out of it, then what you have is an ultramafic rock. And because the Martian meteorites, the SNCC meteorites, the samples of Mars that we think we already have in hand, are all basalts or ultramafic rocks, we figured that's what we would be dealing with. On the right-hand side shown in red here are the analyses in terms of these 3 elements of all of the SNCC meteorites. These right in here are basalts. This one down here at the bottom, ALH 84001, is, I suppose, the most famous meteorite on Earth by now, in that that is the one that has been suggested to contain vestiges of ancient Martian life. And here's Viking.
Well, the new pictures from Mars are about 2 or 3 minutes away, I've been told. We're going to take a break for that long, come back and show them to you. Stay with CNN's Talk Back Live.
1986, there's a total of 3,813 home runs in the majors. 1987, there's 4,458. 17% jump. You know why?
No.
Because the climate in Haiti was terrific that year.
Haiti?
Yeah, it's a bumper year for crops. First sign of hope in years. People are working harder. Guys who wind the cores of the baseball are winding them tighter. Tighter cores, more home runs.
You know, you have pesto on your shirt.
Meridian Vineyards. Know your wine.
Right now, you can borrow up to $100,000 with a no-equity second mortgage and pay absolutely no closing costs. You could buy rental property, jump on a hot stock, join a country club, whatever you want. Just call 1-800-71-FIXED. With your good credit, Ditech can help you to leverage the full value of your home and loan you up to $100,000 on a no-equity second mortgage with absolutely no closing costs. It all adds up to smart money from Ditech Funding. Call now, 1-800-71-FIXED.
There's a big event this summer that's drawing huge crowds. It's the Sears Hearing Spectacular, now through July 26th at participating Sears Hearing Aid Centers. Come in for a free hearing screening during this event, and Miracle Ear will make a $1 donation to support the Arthritis Foundation. Plus, there's so much more happening, like 0% finance charge and no payment for 90 days with your Sears card. So stop by the Sears Hearing Spectacular, and please, no cutting in line.
The new Encore movie networks, all in digital picture and sound. So call your cable operator. Satellite dish owners call 1-800-DIRECTV or 1-800-PRIME-STAR. The new Encore movie networks. Just what you're in the mood for.
Imagine if getting gas were more like mid-flight refueling. We have at the new, faster, easier Shell. Shell, moving at the speed of life.
Well, I used to think all denture adhesives were the same until I tried Super Polygrip. And I found that works best for me because it works great. It keeps everything in place. Super Poly Grip. Here's the proof.
Hi, welcome back. The briefing continues. They are almost done with the charts of the chemical composition of Mars, which if you're a chemist, you'd be very interested in. If you're me, you find it hard to keep up with. In the audience during the break, people were saying, how much titanium is there? Could they use it for rocket fuel? And the answer is yes and maybe. But it's going to take me at least a couple of hours to analyze this data. While Hap McSween, the Mars rock, Earth rock expert, continues his presentation, we can listen in again. Maybe he's done with his charts, and I would tell you that the fellow who has been doing the great Martian picture show for us day after day after day is Peter Smith. He's kind of the poet of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and he's going to pop up and talk about the probe raising its head lazily up, and I mean, he's really good at this, and he's the next guy up. As soon as he comes up, we're going to see the new pictures, and that's what I'm waiting for. So anyway, we can go back and listen to Hap for a couple more minutes, and then Peter Smith will be coming up.
Well, and we get virtually the same result. The rock is roughly maybe a third quartz. Quartz is the mineral, the white mineral that forms beach sand quite commonly, and it's about a third feldspars. Feldspar is the most common mineral in the crust of the Earth, the continental crust of the Earth, and it's about a third pyroxene. Now, it is not clear that pyroxene is the real mineral there. That is the mineral that's calculated in the norm. But that mineralogy, that assemblage of minerals and those proportions of minerals is also consistent with the assignment of this rock as an andesite. So to conclude, if this rock is a volcanic rock, then we would call it an andesite. It is also possible that it is not an igneous rock. It is not a lava. We are not sure yet. I lean towards that interpretation because the rock looks a little bit like Swiss cheese, and the holes we think are what are called vesicles. They are gas bubbles that typically form in lavas. But there are other ways to explain this Swiss cheese texture due to weathering that might explain it as well. If it's not an andesite, then it is a mixture of several rocks. Could be a mixture, it could be a sedimentary rock derived from particles of, say, a granite mixed with particles of basalt. That would give you a composition that would be much like this. Or, and that could have been done in water. You carry these particles downstream and then redeposit them and compact them into a rock. The other possibility is that you sampled two different kinds of rocks like this and mixed them in a large impact event. And indeed, on the surface of the moon, many rocks are what we call breccias. They are physical mixtures of materials that have been ground up by impact and then re-cemented. So we can't say for sure yet whether this is an igneous andesite or whether it is a mixture of several rocks. And we hope to get high-resolution images coming down very shortly of the texture of the rock that might help us with this. Let me conclude by saying that I sure didn't expect this, but I think it's very exciting, and I look forward to looking at some of the spectra of some of the rest of these rocks. This site really is a rock festival, and I think, to tell you the truth, I was scared to death at the beginning of this mission because when the first information came down that the spacecraft was sitting level at a 2-degree slope or something, I could just see mud fest. But this has turned out to be very, very exciting, and I think we're going to see a real collection of rocks, a real smorgasbord of rocks here when we get more data. Thank you. Okay. Now Peter Smith will tell you about some latest imaging.
On the fourth Martian day, the monster pan, so called for its huge volume of data, came back to Earth. Our image processing team, stretched to their limits, has processed into color the middle 2 tiers of what will be a 4-tier panorama. This shows the terrain that Sojourner will travel in over the next few weeks. And looking beyond The panorama looks just beyond the edge of the lander pedals and goes out about 15 or 20 feet. And we can explore it together, looking at the rocks and the soil, and imagining the rover traversing along this pathway, and we'll find out as it happens exactly what path she decides to take. And if I can have the video, imagine the rover going around this scene. You'll notice some of the data was lost in transmission and gives these peculiar colors. This will be recovered. Now we're looking just over the rover pedal. Here comes the rover. This is before it got to Barnacle Bills. This was in the position it first left the lander. Of course, in the background is Yogi. You may have to help me here. I'm having trouble remembering all the rock stars. I'm terrible with these names.
Are you bringing us in now?
Casper, yes.
We're watching these new pictures of Mars coming in, and John Holloman, I noticed that as soon as these came up, he walked right up. You know, you're like a child in front of the television set looking at these new pictures. These are really spectacular.
Well, I've been waiting for 2 days to see this picture, Susan. I'll just tell you. I don't know what it means exactly, but Peter Smith does, and he's telling us. And I've been told to expect great things from here. There's a little antenna that has a camera up at the top of it on the lander. And that's the lander itself you're seeing in this pan as it rolls around there, part of the weather station on the lander. Everybody was surprised that the high temperature on Mars yesterday was 10 degrees above zero. They thought it was going to be 10 degrees below zero, which means the equipment up there is going to last much longer because it's just 20 degrees warmer weather than they expected.
We've got several other people standing by. In addition to you, John Holloman, Donna Shirley, she's the NASA program manager. John Zarella, who is out in Pasadena, California at JPL. And we're going to start. Can we bring those guests in now or should we wait? Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring them now. And Donna, welcome. This is a real pleasure for me to get to talk to you. I'm going to send the first question to a young man named Anthony in our audience. Go ahead, Anthony.
Is there any proof of active volcanoes on Mars?
I'm sorry, Anthony, I couldn't quite hear that.
Is there any
volcanoes on Mars?
Any proof of active volcanoes on Mars, Donna?
No, there is no proof of activity. Viking was there about 20 years ago, and MGS is going to be there very soon, and we'll be able to see if anything has changed in between. But scientists believe that those volcanoes are probably extinct.
And that was one of the things, Donna, you just really had me glued to the television when you said Barnacle Bill is not what we thought he was, but
right.
You'll have to wait. Isn't that part of it, the volcanic activity in Barnacle Bill?
Yes, but this kind of volcanic activity is called andesitic activity, and it's like the Andes Mountains, and it's like Mount St. Helens, where things blow up instead of where things kind of dribble out the way they do in Hawaii. So this doesn't look like stuff that would have come out of Mount Olympus because it's a shield volcano like Mauna Kea.
Mm-hmm. Question for you from David, who's in our audience. David, go ahead.
Why did they name the rocks after cartoon characters?
I don't know. It's because scientists are pretty funny people, and they just thought that would be cool. And if they used numbers like ALH 84001, they would not remember what they were talking about. But if they call them names that remind them of things, then it's easy for them to remember what those are. And when you say Yogi, everybody knows what you're talking about.
Especially the vision of the couch, because it really does look like a couch. You know, or yes. Casper, or any of these things. Sarah, you've got a question. Right. Speaking of incomprehensibles, go ahead.
What exactly is the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer?
Okay, it's called an alpha proton X-ray spectrometer, and it's an instrument that actually emits little subatomic particles. The molecule, the interior of atoms, without any electrons around it, is the nucleus, and it pings the nucleus of helium atoms against the rock, and those penetrate the atoms in the rock, and either they're bounced back as alpha particles, or they're absorbed, and then a proton, which is just one little piece of nuclear matter, is emitted, or an X-ray, which is like what goes through your bones when you're getting an X-ray. And there's a detector that detects the alpha particles, the protons, and the X-rays. And the amount of those things that come back into the detector is different for each kind of element. And so that's how they measure what these different elements are.
As we're looking at these spectacular pictures of the surface of Mars from the monster pan, monster meaning huge.
And down from this live picture that they're beaming us down right now, and it appears that it is dead calm. If we wanted to parachute in there, we wouldn't have any wind to blow us around. It's kind of, I don't know if you can see it, it's hanging from that mast just to the right of center of your screen.
And speaking of weather, we've got a young man in our audience. Kevin, hold up your hand. Candace, go to Kevin. Kevin, you've got a question about the weather.
Yes, I was wondering if there were any storms on Mars, and if there were, how would the probe go about protecting itself from them?
Well, there are dust...
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay, there are dust storms on Mars, and we can see those right now with the Hubble Space Telescope all the way from Earth. And Viking saw them, and Mariner 9 in 1971 saw them. Those dust storms, though, are not like storms on Earth because the atmosphere of Mars is so thin, it's only 1% as thick as the Earth's atmosphere. So the winds aren't very strong. They don't have much density to support a lot of dust. So the dust that they pick up is the same consistency as tobacco smoke. It's very, very thin. So the winds, if you at 100 miles an hour, it's like holding your hand out the car when you're going 10 miles an hour. There's just not much force there, so we're not at all worried about storms hurting the spacecraft.
We want to bring John Zarella in. John, a gentleman in our audience, works at NASA Dryden. It's about 65 miles or so from where you're stationed. He works where the shuttle lands, so he's got a question for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's the anticipated length of time that the probe will be able to collect the data?
Well, the scientists have told us that the mission had to have a beginning and an end, so it was about a week for the Sojourner and about 6 months for the lander. But they expect, the way the performance is right now, that it could go on for a lot longer. It could go on for up to 6 months, the rover and the lander for perhaps at least a year, Earth year. I mean, then at least a couple more seasons on Mars before they get into winter. And at that point, it gets a little iffy, right, Donna?
Right.
Then the batteries may be wearing down.
Yeah, in fact, there's nothing particularly to kill either the lander or the rover because they're both solar powered until maybe it gets so cold that they freeze, or that the cold hot cycles during the day make the little solder joints work like bending a coat hanger
Contraction and expansion all the time.
So if it doesn't break, it'll probably live until the winter, which is a few months.
Because their year is a lot longer than our year,
Right.
so they have longer spring, longer summer.
Right, twice as much. And since the orbit of Mars is much more elliptical, much more egg-shaped than the orbit of Earth, the seasons are much more extreme.
We are going to take a break at this point. Donna, thank you so much for really making this come to life for so many people, the science. Our audience, I've got to tell you, is really jazzed up, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to ask questions directly of you. So we're going to take a break. More of these questions after this.
What if you could get what you wanted automatically? You can, with the easiest way to earn free gasoline, the Shell MasterCard from Chase. Shell, moving at the speed of life.
Promise me you'll come back for me.
I promise. I'll never leave you.
The English Patient is coming back to theaters for 3 weeks only.
You're in love with him, aren't you?
It's the winner of 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
We're the real countries, not the boundaries drawn on the maps.
This is your last chance to see the best movie of the year on the big screen. The English Patient, rated R, now playing everywhere.
Sun comes up, flowers bloom, alligators see you later, concert shows, zebra pose, parties in spring, lots more things, jungle cruise, big news, world of bears, scary kids, animals, concerts, rides. The new Silver Spring's alive.
Come see the new world of bears. It's now open.
The new Silver Spring's alive.
Housekeeping. Excuse me. Checking out?
Uh-huh.
We'll change the room.
Holiday Inn hotels are undergoing a $1 billion renovation to make every Holiday Inn as good as the best Holiday Inn.
Oh, you're back. Your toothbrush.
That means we're changing a lot more than the sheets. Holiday Inn, on the way.
If you've been drinking Ensure, there's a little something you should know. Nobody, not even Ensure, gives you more protein with less fat than Sustacal. Now, Sustacal can't add years to your life, but it might help add life to your years.
Hello, I'm Lou Waters at CNN Center in Atlanta. Talkback Live will continue in just a moment, but first some important news issued just moments ago from scientists at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, having to do with a popular combination of drugs known as fen-phen, those diet drugs, fenfluramine and phentermine, prescribed to 18 million people last year, and a combination commonly called fen-phen may have been responsible, say the scientists at Mayo, for a thickening of the heart valves in 24 women. Now, these findings will be published in the New England Journal of Medicine in August, but the scientists thought it was important to step before the public now and warn them of the possible public health implications. The researchers reported their findings not only to us, but to the Food and Drug Administration, which was also alerted.
We have identified 24 women with an average age of 43 who were treated with the fen-phen combination for approximately 12 months. Most of these patients were identified by Dr. Crary and his colleagues. All 24 women were previously healthy. They developed the same unusual form of heart valve disease. None of the patients have died. However, many have developed serious cardiovascular diseases requiring either medication or surgery. To date, 5 of these patients have required open heart surgery to repair or replace damaged, leaking heart valves. In addition, 8 patients had newly documented pulmonary hypertension. It is essential to understand that this is a preliminary observation and a more comprehensive study is required and is in the planning phase. At this time, we do not know how frequently valve disease occurs in patients taking fen-phen, which patients taking these medications may be at risk, the mechanism of valve injury, how quickly patients may develop valve disease, and whether this valve disease is reversible when the medications are stopped. Our conclusion is simple. We are concerned that the fen-phen combination may have important implications regarding heart valve disease, but more information is required. In the meantime, patients taking these medications should consult with their physicians to assist them in weighing the potential risk of the medications versus the benefit of weight loss.
And because of the importance of these implications, and because the many millions of Americans who are involved in this drug called fen-phen, we're going to spend a considerable amount of time on our next news program, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Early Prime is the name of the program, giving you all the details and all the information you need to know about fen-phen. The latest numbers from Wall Street, very up day. On the Dow Jones, a little more than 70 points. The NASDAQ is up 10 points. I'm Lou Waters at CNN Center, Atlanta. Talkback Live with Susan Rook continues.
Okay, we are talking about the Mars mission and what NASA folks are seeing on the surface of Mars as we've been watching this. Young man in our audience has a question. Anthony, go ahead and ask your question.
Do they have any proof of active volcanoes on Mars?
No, we don't think so, Anthony. Donna, I think that's what you said before. Am I right or wrong
yeah,
on that?
no active volcanoes.
Okay, where is Matthew? There you go. Into the wrong one. We already answered your question, didn't we, Anthony? No wonder you look startled. Matthew,
I was
go ahead.
wondering how the red soil on Earth compared to the red soil on Mars.
Donna?
Well, I think the scientists really haven't told us that yet, but the red soil on Mars is there because Mars is very rusty. There's something about Mars that's very oxidizing, like bleach is oxidizing. And since there's no oxygen in the atmosphere of Mars, or all just tied up with carbon dioxide, no one really understands why that's happened.
Chica is in our audience, and Chica's from Nigeria. And Chica, my reaction was a lot like yours when you first started seeing these pictures. Go ahead and share that.
Yeah, I was amazed at how similar to like the Sahara Desert in Africa and Arizona here. The pictures from Mars are, it's just like Earth.
Well, it looks kind of like Earth in the deserts, but the processes that went through here are really different than most places on Earth. And the best comparison is with some places in eastern Washington and some places in Iceland where giant floods have been through and left the same kinds of features that we see in these pictures. That's what the scientists are telling us.
Sonny has a question. Go ahead.
You can get a lot of benefit out of Moon. Why are you going that far to Mars?
Was the question about benefit out of the Moon? Why are we going to Mars?
Especially when you have no oxygen over there and you can do nothing for telecommunication.
What's the benefit of going to Mars, I think?
Okay, the Moon is a dead planet, and it's been dead for 4.5 or 5 billion years. Mars has been an active planet fairly recently. Mars has an atmosphere. It has evidence that there was water on the surface at one time, and so there's just a lot more of interest to Mars, and the benefits are threefold. One is we'd like to find out about Mars to see if we are in danger of making the Earth into this cold, airless planet. The second reason is we'd like to understand the weather and the climate on Mars, to use that to model the weather on Earth and learn about how to more correctly anticipate the weather on Earth. And thirdly, if we're ever going to go to another planet in the solar system, Mars will be it.
Let's go to a CompuServe question. It's from Leon Rogers. And the CompuServe question, how do the rover's sensors detect movement other than its own?
The rover's detectors can't detect movement. It's the only thing moving on Mars. The IMP camera, the Imager on Mars Pathfinder that's on the lander, would be able to see something if it had shifted position. So, for instance, if a rock were to be knocked over by the rover, the IMP would be able to tell that because it'd take a picture one day and a picture the next day and see the differences.
And I understand that you've come equipped with show and tell.
Yes,
so you
I
can
have.
point these out. A young friend of mine asked his mother, after seeing this coverage, asked his mother for one of these for Christmas, and her response was, I think it'll be a little expensive for our budget. But so are you going to have a line of toys?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Mattel has come out with a Hot Wheel Mars rover, and it comes in a package that looks like this with a picture of the rover and the lander on the cover. And inside is a little cruise stage, a little spacecraft that is how Pathfinder traveled to Mars, with this little cruise stage on top, back shell, heat shield here. You open that up, and inside, and remember when we came into the Mars atmosphere, we threw away all of that, and we threw away the heat shield, and this is what landed on Mars, a very tiny version of it, and when you open it up, there's an itsy-bitsy rover inside. Here's a little bigger version of it that has the Pathfinder lander as it looks on the surface now with the proper scale rover. And then here is a Hot Wheels rover that actually moves and is a 1/20th scale of the real rover. And so that's what you can get. And then we have a little bigger version here that shows, this is a model that we use for just demonstration. It's not available to the public, but it shows how the lander folds up and how the rover was delivered to Mars squatted down on the pedal, and then when it stood up, it looks more like this little Hot Wheel rover that we have here.
Susan, they sold 1,500 of these Hot Wheels rovers here at JPL yesterday. The line snaked about 200 yards around where we're standing now, and they sold out, and we thought there was going to be a riot here at JPL.
Yeah,
it's the hottest property here.
Right,
Well,
Mattel is having trouble with it.
I'll tell you, that's where I'm going after the show, okay? Because I've got some young men in my life, so I'm going to go and pick up one of those. John, I'll get you one for your son, baby Jay. We've got to take a break. We're going to be back right after this.
Here's something you should never do with your eyeglasses unless they're made from Flex-On. Even after bending and twisting, Flex-On frames still look and fit great. Feel free to fall asleep in your glasses. Feel free to squeeze your Flex-On frames. Feel free to kid around. Flex-On frames, durable, comfortable, light. Ask for them by name. Flex-On by Marchon.
Everyone finds our Riverwalk incredibly beautiful, but there's a lot more here that's beautifully incredible. We have whales that fly, rides that make you scream backwards, pyramids, dinosaurs, and everything from Tejano to classical to bagpipes, plus so many festivals, we have to send some down the river. So call for a free vacation kit with valuable discounts and things you'll remember just as much as the Alamo. It's pure fun, it's pure amazing, and it's pure San Antonio.
Get the new Encore movie networks, and you can choose from 7 premium movie channels, each with a different theme. We have a channel that shows only Westerns. We've got an action channel, all action, 24 hours a day. And a spine-tingling mystery channel, all in digital picture and sound. So call your cable operator. Satellite dish owners call 1-800-DIRECTV or 1-800-PRIME-STAR. The new Encore movie networks, just what you're in the mood for.
There's nutrition news about heart disease. The B vitamin folic acid may help reduce homocysteine levels in the blood, an emerging risk factor for heart disease. Centrum and Centrum Silver have folic acid.
Centrum, always complete from A to zinc.
What if nothing stood between you and where you needed to go? It's like that at Shell, where it's easy to pay, pump, and go. Shell, moving at the speed of life.
As we were talking about children, as we mentioned earlier, Elaine and Maria, both teachers, they're with the Young Astronauts program at your school in New Jersey. And where are you going after this, Maria?
Oh, we're going to space camp.
Awesome. Okay, and some of their students are here with us today. So you're going to space camp, and your question for John is?
Oh, I wanted to know how long the program has been in existence and how much longer will it be funded?
Well, Donna Shirley, who's probably out there listening, can tell you she has been vitally involved in this program for at least 5 years. They've known they wanted to do this for a long time. Donna, when did the first germ of an idea for Pathfinder come up inside NASA?
Well, actually, we've been thinking about landing on Mars ever since Viking, and we've been working on rovers since the 60s because we knew that we wanted to move around. And when Viking landed on Mars, it was very frustrating because the scientists wanted to reach out and touch those rocks, and they couldn't. This particular program, the particular mission, Pathfinder, has been in the planning stages since about 1992 and actually got funded in '94. But we do have in the future a whole program of Mars exploration with missions every 26 months. So we have Mars Global Surveyor going into orbit this September, and then 2 missions in '98, '01, '03, and a sample return in '05.
And I would imagine that phenomenally successful missions continue to boost satisfaction with the program and enthusiasm. And of course, these marvelous pictures aren't hurting. John, can you walk us through a sunset Mars style?
Yeah, we just got downlinked a picture of sunset on Mars. I have not seen it yet. I want to see it. I bet Donna and John Zarella want to see it as well. Okay, sunset over Ares Vallis, which is the landing zone. And this one, Donna, maybe if you can see this, it's just a little strip view of the sunset, but you see the big sun. The sun is much brighter, it appears, on Mars at sunset than it appears on Earth. Donna?
Well, I think that's because Mars doesn't have a very thick atmosphere, so we're seeing the undiluted, almost unfiltered sunlight come through. Now, one of the things that Matt Golombek said in the press conference was that the Hubble is going to be taking more pictures of Mars, and they're going to try to understand why Hubble is seeing clouds, but Pathfinder isn't seeing clouds.
No kidding. Donna, let me ask you this. Earthrise or Earthset over Mars. Will we get a picture of that? And is it going to be more impressive to see the Earth come up over the limb of Mars than it is for all of us when we run outside and look down to the south or southwest and see Mars every night right now just after sunset?
Well, I'm not sure what Earth is going to look like, and it'll probably not be a picture of Earthrise. It won't be a movie. It'll just be a picture trying to get the Earth in it. And I believe in this press conference they've already imaged Deimos, so that means that's the moon of Mars. They're already been successful in looking up.
So we will continue
to pictures of the sun.
We'll continue to get all of this information and these gorgeous pictures throughout the days. John Holloman, thank you so much for being here. John Zarella and Donna Shirley, a pleasure. Our audience just really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to make science real, you know? Thanks to all of you for joining us. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care. Enjoy.
Tonight on CNN's Larry King Live, meet the key players in the notorious stop sign case. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Easton's incredible half-price suit blowout is on now. Our entire inventory of suits priced $3.99 to $6.99 is now half price. We have over 850 suits to choose from, featuring the finest suits by Corbin, Peerless, and Country Britches, all at half price. Our knowledgeable staff can help you find your fit and style, all at incredible savings during Easton's half-price suit sale. The finest clothing, the best service, Easton's Limited, 839 Massachusetts in downtown Lawrence.
Waxman Candles, a Lawrence tradition since 1971. The most innovative candle shop in the country with candle accessories from around the world, providing you with high-quality fragrance candles. Waxman Candles, the place where you can find something for everyone.
Where is one of the largest selections of furniture in Northeast Kansas? Messenger's Home Furnishings. Where is the best value in furniture in Northeast Kansas? Messenger's. Where can you get free delivery, special orders, and affordable financing? Messenger's. You'll get the message when you visit the Messenger showroom located just west of 59 Highway on 23rd Street in South Ottawa. So where are you going to do your furniture shopping? Messenger's Home Furnishings.
Kansas City. You're an air-conditioned city. You want the best service, prompt service, service with integrity. You want the Rheem Team. The Rheem Team provides a level of service you'd never expect from a team of service people, even though you probably should. Call Advantage Heating and Air Conditioning in Lawrence at 842-6996 or Arch Heating and Cooling in Pleasant Hill at 987-3510. The Kansas City Rheem Team. We will impress you.
This is CNN.
On Wall Street, blue chip stocks rocket to their 30th record of the year. I'm Myron Kandel at the CNN Financial News Desk in New York. Optimism about earnings helping push stocks to record levels. As the closing bell rings and final trades are still being counted, the Dow Industrials are up more than 100 points. over the 7,900 level for the first time, leading the Advanced International Paper, surging 5 13/16 at 57 after announcing a major restructuring and the reduction of 7,000 jobs. The broader markets also ending with big gains, the Nasdaq Composite climbing 13 points. That's a brief look at the financial markets. Inside Politics is up next.
From Washington, this is Inside Politics with Bernard Shaw and Judy Woodruff.
Thank you for joining us. And Bernie, welcome back from Asia and welcome back from
good to be back.
CNN's coverage of the Hong Kong handover. We're glad to have you back.
It's good to be back.
Allegations that Beijing has tried to buy its way into the U.S. political process were on the agenda today as the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee opened its public hearings on campaign fundraising. We get details on the kickoff of the proceedings from CNN's Candy Crowley.
It was a not-so-subtle, eminently interesting struggle for the headlines. The Republican chairman went straight for the hard stuff.
The committee believes that high-level Chinese government officials crafted a plan to increase China's influence over the U.S. political process. Activities in furtherance of the plan have occurred both inside and outside of the United States. Our investigation suggests that the plan continues today.
The ranking Democrat responded with a news nugget of his own. John Huang, former Commerce Department official, former Democratic fundraiser, the main man everyone has been trying to get to, has offered to show up under certain conditions.
That Mr. Huang is willing to come before the committee and not exercise his Fifth Amendment rights. He will respond to any questions the committee may ask on any aspect of our investigation. He will ask for limited immunity only.
Beyond the headlines, both parties struggled to manage the story in the best light possible. Helped along by months of headlines focused on Democratic wrongdoing, Republicans kept up the pounding.
I want to know, who is John Huang's patron? Who put him in the Commerce Department?
President Clinton offers the White House Lincoln bedroom for overnighters to 938 people who collectively contributed over $10 million, many of which $50,000 or $100,000 for those sleepovers. That's more than pushing the envelope.
Democrats took the everybody does it approach, arguing that the evil is not in the misdeeds of a few, but in a system that requires so much money to win an election.
I begin this hearing by simply suggesting to my colleagues, this is a problem that we Americans in some measure brought upon ourselves. The American campaign finance system has been an accident waiting to happen.
As eager as they are to share the Klieg lights of blame, Democrats are up against one very powerful fact of life on Capitol Hill. The Republican chairman sets the agenda. The first witness will be Richard Sullivan. He is the former finance director of the Democratic National Committee. Bernie?
Thank you, Candy. John Huang's qualified offer to testify before the Governmental Affairs Committee raises a question. Can the Senate grant the very unusual deal Huang wants? Our Money Trail correspondent Brooks Jackson explores the important matter of immunity.
The man who started it all, John Huang, sent word he'll talk if the Senate cuts him a very unusual deal. Immunity from prosecution under some laws, but not others. The offer came from his lawyer, Ty Cobb, in a letter faxed to Senate Democrats just 1 hour and 13 minutes before the opening of Senate hearings. Cobb said Huang would not seek immunity from prosecution for disclosure of classified information, or breaking foreign agent laws, or economic espionage, or unlawful communication of classified information, or perjury.
While Mr. Huang will answer questions on any subject, his testimony can be used against him in a prosecution for any of these charges.
However, Senator Glenn said Huang still does want immunity for violations of campaign finance laws before he'll testify about illegal and questionable campaign donations he raised. Some Republicans suggest Huang may have been a spy for China. Huang's lawyer says he wants to deny that publicly. In his letter, he said, having become a defenseless target for Asian bashers, Mr. Huang feels compelled to forego the security of his constitutional protections and to attempt honorably to acknowledge whatever mistakes he may have made. Chairman Thompson says he's skeptical the Senate can grant anyone immunity under some laws and not others.
The only problem with that is that he is asking us for something that we probably legally cannot give him.
But some legal scholars say the Senate does have the power to grant Huang the unusual deal he seeks. Committee lawyers are scrambling to research the question. The key question is, what does Huang have to say? If it's a telegenic story of high-level intrigue, he could get immunity for everything. But if it's only the confessions of a fundraiser who broke campaign laws on his own, the committee might just leave him to the prosecutor's mercy. Bernie?
Thank you, Brooks Jackson. Let's go quickly to Judy.
And a short while ago, I talked with John Huang's attorney, Ty Cobb, at his office here in Washington. I began by asking him why the sudden change of heart in offering to have Huang testify.
It's really not a turnaround.
Implementation of the plan has been handled by Chinese government officials and individuals enlisted to assist in the effort. Activities in furtherance of the plan have occurred both inside and outside of the United States. Our investigation suggests that the plan continues today.
That is a suggestion that the Chinese government has heard before and has denied before. As early as May 9th, the president of China said, "My government has never been involved in any supported any political contributions. This has no base in fact." One of those names frequently mentioned in these hearings is that of John Huang, a former Commerce Department official, as well as a fundraiser for the Democrats. He has been one of those figures that they have been unable to talk to, although Senator John Glenn of Ohio, the ranking Democrat, says that may well change.
Given the fact, however, that Mr. Huang would not be immune from prosecution for espionage or the unauthorized transfer of classified information, and would also be subject to prosecution for perjury, I believe this may be a very unique and inexpensive opportunity to inform ourselves and the American people about an issue that has been of serious concern to all of us.
Senator Glenn revealed that in a letter from John Huang's attorney, John Huang did offer to testify before this committee on anything they would like to talk about. John Huang would like what is called limited immunity, that is in regards to several federal election laws, but he is quite willing to go without immunity on the more serious charges or allegations of espionage and also giving classified U.S. material to people who were unauthorized to view it. So the hearings will continue throughout today, again with just the senators giving their various takes on what's going on. Tomorrow will be the first witness, a DNC official who was directly over John Huang. Back to you in Atlanta.
All right, Candy Crowley on Capitol Hill, and you can check out CNN Interactive for updates and background on these Senate campaign fundraising hearings. That web address is allpolitics.com/gavel to gavel, and gavel to gavel is all one word.
Got it. In about 2 hours, NASA is expected to tell us more about ancient floodplains, crater rims, and boulders on
There
Mars.
you go. CNN national correspondent John Holloman. Well, you're more than a national correspondent. You're a galactic correspondent now, are you not?
Solar system now,
Solar
I think.
system,
That's
man.
kind of, yeah,
okay,
right,
what's the
right.
latest, John?
Well, what you said, coming up in 2 hours. Shuttle astronauts are going to try to get through to Mike Foale aboard the Mir space station on walkie-talkies. But we won't be able to see that live on CNN because we're going to be getting the latest pictures from Mars. If you're a ham radio operator, you might get to hear the back and forth between Mir and the shuttle as it happens. But at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, we're going to be at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory looking at the latest pictures from Mars. We'll play back the Mike Foale phone call from space later in that hour. The big picture from Mars is this one. Jet Propulsion Laboratory scientists call it the Monster Pan. It was taken from a camera known as IMP, which is atop a mast on the Carl Sagan Research Station. You remember it. It's the spaceship formerly known as Pathfinder. The coming attractions may be even more spectacular than the previews we've been looking at since the 4th of July. CNN's John Zarella is at the Jet Propulsion Lab to take a look. John?
Good morning, John, from sunny California. Today, I have to tell you that we ran in last night to one of the mission managers here, and he was telling us, he says, boy, he says, the scientists are just all aglow, and in the next couple of days, there are going to be some spectacular revelations about Mars. leading me to believe that some interesting findings are coming out from very early indications of science. Later today, the briefing, we should get a preview of some of that monster pan, and of course, to take us through a little bit of what we might see is Donna Shirley. And Donna, you, of course, the head of the Mars exploration program here and our resident expert on CNN. Donna, what can we expect in that briefing today?
Well, I ran into a couple of scientists in the dark in the parking lot at 3 o'clock this morning, and they said that the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer data from Barnacle Bill is back, and that Barnacle Bill is not what we thought it was. And so stay tuned, news at noon at Pacific time.
That should be good. I know you've brought a guest with you today.
Yes, I have.
And John, you know what we've done all along is been showing people the Sojourner rover, but there's more to space exploration than just Sojourner. Been there, done that. What's next, Donna?
What's next is that we're in 2001, we're going to have another rover on the surface, and this rover is not like Sojourner, just confined to the area of the lander. This rover is going to go over the horizon and collect samples. And in fact, here is a model of the rover. And this is Lee Sword, who is one of the mechanical engineers that's designing this, what they call the lightweight survivable rover. We have to think of a better name for it.
Lee, give us an idea here of what this is all about as we go in tight on that and let the viewers take a look at this. What is it called? LSR-1 right now?
The lightweight survivable rover. We were focusing on making it much larger and lighter than the current Sojourner rover. For the 2001 missions, the rovers are going to have to interact with their environment better, and the 2001 rovers are likely to have a manipulator system on them so they can actually turn rocks over, see what's underneath the rocks, be able to disturb the environment rather than, as Sojourner does, simply sniff the rocks and investigate what's on the surface. The focus here was to use composite materials to make the structure lighter. We also focused on making things volume efficient, rovers that will get bigger once we get to Mars. We can package in small volumes on the spacecraft and actually expand to a larger size once we get to Mars.
Now, I saw you folding up one of the wheels before. I mean, this is this really folds up.
These wheels actually stow in 1/3 of their deployed volume.
Can you show us one of the wheels just folding up?
We
Give
could
us an idea.
deploy one of these wheels and show that it actually
there you go.
Folds down to about 1/3 of its stowed volume. This year, that research task is including folding structure to make rovers that will stow in very small packages.
Now, I understand, Donna, that with these rovers, the idea is going to be that they're going to be going a long way away from the mothership.
Right, about 10 kilometers if we're lucky. Although if the scientists want to stop at every rock, I don't know that we'll make 10 kilometers. But these will actually be able to collect samples and store them. We'll have one of these in 2001, one in 2003, and then in 2005 we'll send a sample return to bring some of those samples back to Earth.
A couple of quick things then. The scooper, let's talk again about the scooper real quick and what you're going to be able to do with that, Lee. And then let's give the viewers a comparison of the Sojourner to this one in size. But first, the scooper.
Well, this is an all-composite scooper arm that includes an abrasion wheel so they can actually remove the surface material off the rock and get a good close look at the insides of the rock, a microscopic imaging camera on this end, and the scoop is also a 3D composite material able to either pick up samples and cache them or actually disturb the environment and see what's underneath the rocks.
Let's, before we go back to Atlanta, real quick look.
The viewers have seen Sojourner on the surface of Mars, and this is the size comparison, how much larger they will get for the 2001 mission.
And the other thing is that even though LSR is much bigger than Sojourner, it's a lot lighter, so we can carry a lot more payload for the same launch mass.
So in the future, some fabulous discoveries, probably on Mars, new rover technology, again, heading towards that sample return mission. So sometime in the next 5 years or so, John, a vehicle similar to this, a rover like this, will probably be making headlines, and hopefully you and I will still be here to cover it. John?
No kidding, John. You know, they're going to have a minivan on Mars one of these days, I'll bet, if they keep, doubling in size and getting them more and more lightweight. What a fascinating time to be alive. Natalie, Lou?
All right, John, thanks so much. We'll see you in a bit. And in about 2 hours, NASA is expected to tell us more about the ancient floodplains and etc. We'll bring you a a live news conference at 3 p.m. Eastern.
While that's going on, Headline News will be carrying live a news conference at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota regarding...
There's some kind of a material there that looks like it's indurated or something. There's Yogi, and we were a little worried about going right in there because there's a little moat and the rover might tip down a bit. So we're going to try to crab sideways. We can actually move sideways with the rover and try to get around to the side of the rock.
Matthew Golombek, I know some fascinating science still coming out here. The history of Mars unfolding before the very eyes of an excited group of scientists. This is John Zarrella reporting live from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Judy?
All right, John, fascinating stuff. Bernie?
His career is on the line and in the hands of the Nevada boxing officials. Coming next on Worldview, Mike Tyson preparing for the punishment, cleaner, more efficient auto engines. He says he's ecstatic with the results and his team is getting, quote, more data than we know what to do with. The shuttle is about halfway through a 16-day mission.
There are quite a few ecstatic scientists poring over the latest data from the Mars Pathfinder mission. Our John Zarrella joins us now from the U.S. Space Agency's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. John.
Good evening, Judy. Today, more spectacular pictures coming out at the afternoon briefing and more science released about the nature of Barnacle Bill, the first rock examined on Mars. Still, the question remains, what exactly is Barnacle Bill? Is Barnacle Bill a volcanic rock or perhaps something else? Scientists still not quite clear about that. But Matthew Golombek, the chief scientist here today, said, "Clearly, we're on Mars, guys." That was his quote in response to a picture that they released from the rover, taken from the rover Sojourner of the lander. You can see the landing craft there, the Pathfinder lander, the ramp down which Sojourner had to traverse. Turned out it was quite a steep angle, and to the left of the screen on the picture, the airbag material, still quite inflated. A good thing it did not cover up the lander, and everything worked well. They were able to get Sojourner off. Now, they also released a short movie showing Sojourner doing something that, of course, automobiles can't do. There it is, like a crab, turning by crabbing across the Martian surface. At one point, they also spun the wheels and dug into the Martian surface. You can actually see it digging in a little ways there as well. And one of the highlights, the Monster Pan, finally released today, 360 degrees. There's the rover Sojourner. There's Yogi, the big rock, as we pan left to right across the Martian landscape. This particular pan is made up of about 200 tile-shaped images that have come down over the past 3 or 4 days from the landing craft and back here to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the imaging processing facility here. The press conference also provided some light moments when one of the scientists on the team, Peter Smith, said that he's actually started to live on Martian time.
All right, I want to make a quick observation on the effects of shifting your schedule 37 minutes later every day to stay on Martian local solar time. When you say good morning as the sun is setting, now that's living on Martian solar time. When your sunglasses look like this, that's living on Martian time. When there's no time for laundry and you get your shirts out of the box of Project T-shirts every day, that's living on Martian solar time. When you start admiring strange-looking rocks, giving them names and talking about them to your friends, that's living on Martian time. When your days are called souls and your nights are called days, that's living on Martian time. But when you start laughing at the engineer's jokes, you know you're living on Martian time.
Joining us now to talk about living on Martian time, Dave Gruhl. And you're an engineer, and Peter Smith starts laughing at your jokes. You're on Martian time. I want to tell the folks out there that you are probably as responsible as anyone for the success of Pathfinder and the rover Sojourner on the surface, because you're the guy who provided the gremlins. Now, to have anything successful, you've got to provide problems for the scientists.
That's true.
So what did you do?
Well, one of the tasks we had to do is we spent a lot of time during the cruise stage of the mission testing out exactly what we were going to do on the surface. And my job in that whole
picture of doing that stuff was to go into the sandbox, which is where we tested all of our stuff, and to throw abnormal situations to all the other engineers for them to try and figure out and to resolve using the data that they actually would be getting from the spacecraft. So when we actually got to the surface of Mars, they had a lot of stuff in their back pocket and a lot of experiences in their back pocket to allow them to be able to go around or get around any problem that they might see on the surface.
And one of the problems that they saw right off the bat was the airbag.
The airbag material in the way of the rover being deployed. That's one of the test cases we threw at them right from the start. And the minute I saw that come down from the surface, I knew it wasn't going to be a problem because we had tested it numerous times actually in our test environment to show them that they could actually do it by lifting the pedal up, sucking the airbag material in more, and putting the pedal back down. We could get around that, and the rover could get off successfully, and we could have a successful mission.
Dave, thank you very much for joining us. And all of the science team has told us that thanks to the work of Dave and throwing them those curves, they were able to figure out the problems and move on very quickly. We want to remind you, 3:30 Eastern Time tomorrow, the next of the NASA briefings, and of course on Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You will not want to miss it. A 1-hour special. That's the Journey to the Red Planet, the little rover that could. And that promises to be a wonderful program. This is John Zarella reporting live from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. Judy?
Fascinating stuff, especially watching the rover dig into the surface of Mars. Thank you, John. Now to London and Hillary.
Thanks, Judy. Well, still up in space, the crew aboard the damaged space station Mir spent a second day Wednesday unloading fresh supplies from the visiting U.S. cargo ship Progress. The cargo includes more than 2 tons of food, water, oxygen, and equipment needed to restore full power to Mir. The 11-year-old Russian space station has operated on partial power since June 25th, when it was hit by an out-of-control cargo ship. Later this month, the 3-man crew will try to repair the Mir Spectre module, which has suffered the brunt of the damage.
Interest in Mir has launched a new attraction. Later here on Worldview, we're going to visit the space station's cousin here on Earth. Very fitting tribute. On the surface of Mars Thursday, the U.S. Space Agency's 6-wheeled rover had a rough ride. Our man John Zarella, following NASA's mission to the Red Planet, joins us now with the latest. John?
Good evening, Bernie. Well, it was kind of a heat wave today on Mars. They described the temperature on Mars today as 8 above, a little warmer than yesterday's 1 above, and the low only got to -100 Fahrenheit, so somewhat of a heat wave there. To discuss some of the images that we saw today and this little fender bender on Mars is Justin Mackey, one of the members of the imaging team from the University of Arizona. And Justin, take us through first what was really spectacular. We saw for the first time some virtual reality that you folks put together.
Right. Because the imp can see in stereo, you can get the distance to the objects that are in the field. And if you take all of the images and put them together, you can create a virtual reality 3D model. And you can go zoom around, fly around in the model, get distances to rocks, get distances to the rover, things like that, and get sort of the surface features. And
how does that help the team?
Well, it helps a lot, first of all, just knowing the sizes of all the different rocks that are out there. And it helps the rover team when they plan their traverses, when they want to go to a rock, and can they go over a rock or do they have to go around it? And it's also nice just to give a little more feel for the landing site, being able to fly through it.
And on this particular view that we're seeing now, we've got Yogi in the distance there and Sojourner in the foreground here.
Right, and one of the things that this model helped identify was this overhang, which is on Yogi. It makes it a little hard for the rover to get up to the rock because it's sort of jutting out. And this model helped identify that, and you could see it really well just by flying up to it.
Now, you're the guy who decided you were going to do rover movies.
Right.
And you did it when Sojourner came down the lander, and it became so popular, decided to continue on. And we have the rover movie now of Sojourner when it kind of missed the mark.
Right. It was going towards the rock, and it was slightly off so that the wheel hit that overhang, and it started to climb. And once it sensed that it was climbing, it said, "Up, I'm not supposed to do this," so it stopped. And that's the movie here, as you can see.
In the last couple of frames there, as it's repeating, you can actually see the spectrometer coming out right there.
Yep.
just before it climbs
Right.
the rock.
Ready to check out the rock.
So that's, are we going to continue to see more of these movies?
Yeah, it turns out that this is actually a useful planning tool for the rover drivers, and we also like to see just what's going on, and it's a great documentation source for the mission.
How many pictures, last question, have you taken so far on Mars?
Well, it's been over 2,000. It's 2,280 pictures as of 1:30 this morning.
As of 1:30 this morning, 2,000. Now, I know you were telling me a little earlier that a lot of the older members of the team are starting to fall by the wayside.
Right, and us younger guys are keeping on strong. We've got a lot of energy, and there's a lot of excitement on the team, so we're pushing through. But the older guys they're taking it easy a little now, sitting back and letting us kind of run the show.
I know some of the folks have been telling us 24 hours, 28 hours, I mean, just keeping going, 13, 14-hour days, not uncommon.
Right. I've been putting in probably about 18 hours, 16 to 18-hour days. Today has been a little longer day, but on average about 16 to 18 hours.
Give us a preview of what we expect to see tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow we're going to get some more color data back, and we're going to do the whole landing site in high-resolution color, which is even better than the monster pan. So we should get some really nice views of the landing site in full color.
Now, the other day I saw a virtual, well, it was high-definition television, 3D glasses, and the images we saw earlier are somewhat similar to that. What I saw, that was spectacular.
It's great stuff, and that's one of the really nice things about the camera is that you could get the whole thing, the whole landing site in 3D and view it in many different ways, many different angles, with different television devices. It's great stuff.
Justin, thanks so much for joining us. Again, the science team here, the engineering team here has been spectacular, always available to us, and I know it's wonderful for our viewing audience to have an opportunity to hear from the people who landed this vehicle on the planet Mars. Bernie?
And John Zarella. Wonderful having you and the crew there reporting the story. Thanks very much. CNN will have a special presentation on NASA's mission to Mars. It is called The Little Rover That Could, and it can be seen Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Hillary?
Thanks, Bertie. Well, when Worldview continues, is it possible to get AIDS from a kiss? We'll have a full report.
And so today, maybe the remains of one of the century's most terrifying figures finally are being seen more than 50 years after his death.
Ahead here on CNN Today, we'll be talking with the producer of a 10-part documentary series that covers the history of the people of Russia from 1924 to 53 and concentrates on the conflict between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. That's ahead here.
Today on CNN Talk Back Live, your chance to talk back to the folks running the rover around the surface of Mars. They'll tell you what they think. Today, 3 Eastern on CNN.
I'm home.
Hi, honey. I'm over at Mary's house doing the checkbook on their computer. I couldn't wait for you to fix ours.
Dad, the printer's still broken. I need to get my report out, so I went over to Billy's to print it out.
Honey, Brian and I are going to eat at Mary's tonight. Get something delivered.
Nothing in the fridge. Wonder what I can get to order out.
Don't let this happen to you. Call Geeks on Wheels.
Hello, I'm Ralph Tallman of Tallman & Tallman Fine Jewelers. It's hard to believe that we've been in Lawrence for nearly a year now, and we want to say thank you by giving you the opportunity to save up to 50% off our in-stock selections of fine jewelry. For a limited time during our summer clearance sale, you'll save on diamonds, anniversary rings, gold jewelry, and accessories. That's right, find discounts of up to 50% off at Tallman & Tallman Fine Jewelers, located on West 23rd Street, across from the Malls complex. Come see us and save.
The Stop Sign Murders on Larry King Live tonight.
What do you know about the weather?
Nothing. That's why we've hired Flip. Flip, what do you know about the weather?
We don't know a darn thing
Nothing about the weather. What do you know about the weather? No, it's pretty good out there. Pretty typical summertime weather. If you look at the satellite photography, you see a lot of bright white cloudiness in the Great Lakes area reaching back to the Plain States. But you got to remember, thunderstorms are as typical of summertime weather as is the high heat and humidity. Look at the storms right there in the very middle of your screen, right
here. We had a pretty good nasty storm cell move down across Kansas City down into the Ozarks. It is diminishing now, but you can really see it spiraling about. Then a cold front reaches up to the main low with this weather system here in the Great Lakes area. This is all moving to the east, and nasty showers and thunderstorms occurring across southern Michigan now. Nothing severe. I've not been picking up any reports of any severe weather today. Afternoon activity is expected to pop up again in the southeast. We have a cold front rolling in from the northwest with some rain in association with that. Take a look at our weather watch of the hour. It is this area of rainfall here across Michigan, and you can see the line of nasty showers that I spoke of just a moment ago. We'll be back in a moment and take a look at our national radar summary and all of our forecast weather maps right after this.
Wednesday on the American Edge. Let's get it on! Bloodthirsty fans. A battle to the finish. Ultimate fighting. Is this really a sport? It happens every 90 minutes. But for these engineers, the painful memories can last a lifetime.
Not another one. Not another one.
Life and death on America's rails. Big stakes, big money, big deal. You bet it is. America's got gambling fever. All on the American Edge. Wednesday, 10 Eastern on CNN.
Well, as we look at our national radar summary, you can see here that we have the rainfall here spread across the upper Midwest. This is what we were looking at in close-up just a moment ago. A few scattered showers down here in the Midwest, the remnants of that bad storm cell that we spoke of earlier. And you see along the Gulf Coast a lot of activity beginning to pop up here. And in the Northwest, another area of rainfall in association with the cold front coming on in from the northwest. I'm going to push the button now, and I don't know what's going to happen. I was checking the computer, and it's right. We're looking at our accumulated 24-hour rainfall. Over the next 24 hours, this is where the rainfall will accumulate, and to the amounts that we're going to show you here. The only real heavy stuff in association with the system coming across the Great Lakes area, small area up here could see more than an inch of rain, but most of the rainfall, a quarter inch to a half inch, as this weather system sweeps on through the east, and in fact here in the southeast, a lot of places not going to see any rainfall at all. This is widely scattered afternoon buildup, and as you can see with the cold front coming in from the northwest, we will see perhaps as much as a half inch of rainfall there. Well, as I put this map in motion, you'll be able to see that cold front pushing onshore. Here's our weather system coming from the Great Lakes area through the northeast. Scattered showers and at times possible heavy thunderstorms along this front, particularly along the tail end. It seems to be waving a little bit. And then again tomorrow afternoon thunderstorms pop up across the southeast. So as I said when I started, just about as typical of summertime weather as you could imagine. Still pretty cool in the upper Midwest. Right now, take a look at a few specific forecasts for cities all across North America. Gosh, I just love computers. We'll have more weather coming up later. Now, CNN Today continues.
Now a look at some other stories we're following this hour. A suspect being held in connection with last year's bombing at a U.S. airbase in Saudi Arabia reportedly says he was in Iran at the time of the blast. Hani Sayer is accused of serving as the driver and as a lookout in the Khobar Towers bombing that killed 19 U.S. military personnel. Sayer told the New York Times an airline manifest and his passport show he went to Iran before the bombing, then flew to Kuwait. Sayer was recently extradited from Canada and faces a hearing this week on conspiracy charges. U.S. officials expect him to plead guilty to scouting American locations in Saudi Arabia for possible terrorist attacks. The floodwaters have receded. Now federal checks will be streaming into disaster-stricken parts of Wisconsin and Texas. Both received heavy damage during severe storms and floods last month. President Clinton today signed disaster declarations making federal assistance available to 9 counties in Texas and 4 in Wisconsin. Damage assessments are underway in several other Texas counties. Help may be on the way for those of us who find our long-distance company has been mysteriously switched. It is a practice called slamming and is the #1 complaint to the Federal Communications Commission. Now the FCC is considering new punishments for the illegal practice of companies switching your long-distance company without your permission. Among the possibilities, not having to pay for any long-distance calls made during the time you've been slammed. Didn't know I'd ever been slammed. Got a check now.
I hate it when that happens. Let's check the markets. John Defterios joins us from New York. Hey, JD.
Thanks very much, Lou and Natalie. We have some records about here today. Company earnings grabbing the attention of investors. And ahead of reports from some heavy hitters, blue chip stocks are soaring into record territory. The Dow Jones Industrials are up 64 points right now, trading at 79.23. That's a record if it holds. Broader markets are all higher as well, with the NASDAQ composite powering ahead 9 points, also a record if it holds. A tame day for the bond market. The 30-year Treasury is up just slightly, with the yield at 6.56%. The nation's largest privately held retailer, Montgomery Ward, is fighting for its life. The Chicago-based company is seeking Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection from its creditors. Montgomery Ward wants to reorganize its finances and cut more than $1 billion in debt. But analysts say it'll be a rocky road considering what it's up against.
They lost their focus. They lost touch with the consumer. The stores began to look worse and worse and worse. As a matter of fact, you can actually more or less follow the decline of Montgomery Ward and trace it to the days 5 years ago when Sears Roebuck made a remarkable, almost miraculous comeback.
The 400-store chain expects to lose $250 million in the first half of this fiscal year. Investors getting their first look on the health of the high-tech sector today. Industry leaders Motorola and Advanced Micro Devices report after the closing bell, and tomorrow Compaq Computer gives its results. Ahead of those earnings reports, shares of Motorola jumping another 1 5/8, AMD up 1 3/8, and Compaq climbing more than $4 after tacking on 5 just yesterday. And that's the latest in financial news. We'll have more of CNN Today after this.
Right now, you can borrow up to $100,000 with a no-equity second mortgage and pay absolutely no closing costs. You could buy rental property, jump on a hot stock, join a country club, whatever you want. Just call 1-800-71-FIXED. With your good credit, Ditech can help you to leverage the full value of your home and loan you up to $100,000 on a no-equity second mortgage with absolutely no closing costs. It all adds up to smart money from Ditech Funding. Call now, 1-800-71-FIXED.
Ah, the good old days of supermarket shopping, when nothing stood between you and your next meal. Nothing. But today, there are materials that help lock out harmful contaminants and reduce spoilage, keeping us safe and the food we eat fresh. Plastics make it possible. So now, the rest is history.
Broke his neck to get this job. Then broke the corporate sales record. Even broke the corporate no jeans rule. Who's he sleeping with? Weston. Choose your travel partner wisely. Call 1-800-WESTON-1.
Up here, I feel like traffic is miles away.
With the most horsepower in its class and its accommodating size.
Unlike some others, I have virtually unlimited capacity.
Yukon can make you feel invincible. Yukon by GMC. It puts you comfortably in command.
NATO is saying come on in to 3 former enemies. Leaders of the 16 NATO nations meeting in Spain voted today to expand the alliance's roster to include 3 former Soviet bloc countries. Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic now are eligible for NATO membership in 1999. That's a big win for President Clinton, who had pushed for their inclusion. France had tried to get Romania and Slovenia added to the invitation list, but couldn't persuade fellow members to expand that far, this fast. NATO is credited with helping keep peace in most of Europe in the decades since World War II. This is what it was like in the closing days of World War II. Thundering roars as Soviet shells blew the Nazi capital Berlin into heaps of rubble. The man who brought that nightmare to life disappeared within the chaos he created. Adolf Hitler committed suicide in his bunker as the Russians closed in on his collapsed Third Reich. Now a new documentary recalls the Soviet triumph over Nazism and examines how Hitler and Stalin were locked in a life-or-death duel that was both political and personal. Joining us from Washington is Judith DePaul, who is executive producer of Russia's War, Blood Upon the Snow. Ms. DePaul, thanks for joining us. First of all, I'd like to understand a little bit about how this was made. I have a press release from IBP Films Distribution Limited. You're associated with public broadcast, and the Russian government is cooperating in all this. How did this all come together?
Well, I think it's an extraordinary story. You know, President Yeltsin decided for the 50th anniversary celebration of the Allies, really over Nazi Germany, he decided he wanted to do something. He decided it was time really to lift the veil, to break through the real Iron Curtain, and that meant exposing Stalin. And so he supported his Ministry of Cinematography, and we were chosen basically to be the international co-producers.
There must have been considerable problems associated with this, because we all know that Stalin had used certain propaganda films in telling the tale of certain battles during the invasion of Russia. You must have had some problems about that. What were the other criteria that had to be set in stone before you could go ahead with the project?
Well, that's a very good point, because in order to really ensure that whatever it was that we put on the screen was true fact, we had three criteria. One was a living witness, two was a piece of archival footage, and three was actually a document, a historical document that was able to give proof to the, sometimes it was unfortunately an atrocity that took place.
So I guess the question to you would be, what did you find most significant about this rather ambitious project, which covers 1924 through 1953, I believe, and the war, I imagine, began with the 41 invasion by the Nazis into Russia?
I think that I had heard, like the rest of us, I had heard that at a certain point the whole country was a gulag, and I didn't know what that meant. And in doing this series, I would say that 10, 15 years, every single family in Russia had people who were either killed under his brutal regime or basically suffered in a gulag, which was the equivalent of a concentration camp. And these concentration camps actually started even before Hitler had his famous, infamous concentration camps that were discovered by the Allies toward the end of the war.
So Russia's war really then was a story of two wars, an external and an internal war.
I think that that's absolutely correct. I think the Russian people knew that their country was being invaded, and at that time, of course, was Soviet Russia, and they had to fight the Nazis, but they also had a fight to survive under Stalin, and they were waging a battle on two fronts: to survive at home and basically to survive on the Eastern Front, which was very important to hold for the Allies in their landing, in order for the Allies to be successful.
What's curious to me, I'm just now reading Doris Kearns Goodwin's book called No Ordinary Time, and there's much in there about Stalin and the Non-Aggression Pact in 1939. Stalin, a most paranoid man, which I guess was much of the motivation for the killing within Russia, did not seem suspicious of Adolf Hitler. Don't you find a dichotomy there that defies reasoning?
I think that's one of the enigmas of his personality. I think you really hit it on the head. It appears that he really felt that he and Hitler would probably be able to take over the world and would really probably be able to dominate. And he was seduced into feeling that this was his colleague, that this was his comrade in arms. And of course, he was terribly betrayed. And at a certain point, right before Barbarossa, the invasion, he actually disappeared for, they say, about 11 days.
Now, I was talking about this IPB Films Distribution news release that I got, the headline of which is "Mystery of Hitler's Remains Uncovered in Russia's War." Is that an accurate headline?
I think it's a very accurate headline. During the middle of the filming, we received some very secretive communication that there might be the opportunity for us to film for the first time ever the skull with the bullet wound and the jaw and teeth of Hitler. And we waited literally anxiously. And one day, some people came, very mysteriously. They sort of appeared. They brought it in some paper, literally. And we were given a couple of hours to film this. We were also given the documents, the proof, the dental records, actually, and some historical documents from Hitler's dentist confirming that indeed these were his teeth and his jawbone.
So we are to now believe that these are, in fact, the remains of Adolf Hitler.
Yes, you know, it's been rumored for years, Lou, that Stalin literally absconded with some of the remains of the charred body. And nobody's ever been able to prove it. Finally, documents were unearthed that in the 70s, Yuri Andropov, the head of the KGB at that time, that he had ordered the remains burned, but they did take back to Moscow the skull and the jawbone. And it's quite extraordinary that Stalin himself felt it was really necessary to have control over the end of this man's life.
Right, that would be the question. Why would he do that?
Because he won.
You'd think he'd want to say, well, here it is. Here are the remains. I got the guy.
Absolutely. And he wanted the West. He wanted... it wasn't just paranoia, but he wanted to control the situation as best he could. And the best way to control it was his secret archive.
So, okay. There was another picture that they told me about. I saw it in USA Today. It was the Hitler that wasn't Hitler. What's the story about this?
It's a marvelous story. You know that the Russians actually raised the Russian flag over the Reichstag, and they were the first to go into the Reichstag. They also went in, at that time, before they went into the bunker, they found what appeared to be Hitler's remains, that picture that you've got on the screen right now.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody thought, oh, this is him, this is Hitler. But they brought in some experts, and they actually had the head and the description of Hitler, and they were able to see that the head size and the description of the ears was wrong. But most importantly, they looked down at his socks, and they saw that the socks were darned. And you know that they had been old socks and had had holes in them, and they were sewn. And they said, no, Hitler never would have had darned socks. And eventually, of course, it was a bit more complex than that, but the riddle was solved, and he was the butler. He's actually the butler.
Hitler never wore those darn socks.
That's
Well, Russia's war, Blood Upon the Snow, sounds fascinating. I have a couple of different starting times for it. When does it begin? July 11th,
I believe,
have.
Yeah, I think mainly it's July 11th, but in some cities I believe it's July 14th, pretty much 9 to 11 on most stations.
Okay, we'll watch for it. Judith DePaul, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
We'll take a break. CNN Today will continue in a moment.
Now, as Soviet forces converge on the center of Berlin.
What if nothing stood between you and where you needed to go? It's like that at Shell, where it's easy to pay, pump, and go. Shell, moving at the speed of life.
I'm Jim Palmer with a terrific offer from the Money Store. Apply right now for a home equity loan, and you won't have to make a single payment for 3 months. That's right. Take a 3-month break from your bills and enjoy a little extra breathing room. If that sounds good to you and you own your own home, call the Money Store now. Just dial 1-800-LOAN-YES before August 31st and take the next 3 months off. The Money Store, where America goes for money.
Imagine a world where time drifts slowly, a world where music carries you away. Experience pure moods, the perfect soundtrack for your way of life. Direct from Europe, this multi-platinum collection has won the hearts of millions. Set adrift with the timeless pleasures of tubular bells. Or take a trip into the unknown with the X-Files theme. No other collection gives you the feeling of pure moods. To order Pure Moods, call the number on your screen or send check or money order for the amount shown, plus shipping and handling. Rush delivery available. Call now.
On August 14th, Publishers Clearinghouse could surprise you with $1 million on live TV. Let's go. The bad news is you could flip out in front of millions. The good news is who cares?
Tonight on CNN's Larry King Live, a fallen stop sign caused an accident killing 3 teenagers. The 3 kids convicted say they are innocent. Meet the key players in the notorious stop sign case. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
For centuries, Christians around the world have been taught that witnessing is an integral part of Christianity. It still is, but be careful of the method you choose in the Holy Land. If you share your Bible with a stranger in Jerusalem, you could go to jail. Here's CNN's Walter Rogers in Jerusalem.
Hallelujah! Christ is risen.
The dwindling numbers of Christians in the Holy Land are facing yet another threat.
The Lord our God, the Lord is one.
This time, the threat comes from militant Jews and Israelis who resent and fear Christian efforts to seek converts here. Most alarming to Christians, a newly proposed law jailing anyone for sharing Christian literature.
In fact, it could even include the New Testament, because after all, that is certainly a document that Jesus would say, go into all the world and make disciples.
The proposed law would jail anyone who possesses, contrary to law, or prints, or reproduces, or disseminates, or distributes, or imports, tracts, or publicizes things in which there is an inducement to religious conversion. Nissim Zvili is a Knesset member and co-sponsor.
We are a Jewish state. We want to remain a Jewish state.
Much of the literature in this small Christian bookstore would be outlawed by the legislation in its present form. Orthodox Jews already come here to harass customers, and there are fears if the newest anti-missionary laws were to pass, militants might try to shut this down entirely.
I see this as being quite contrary to human rights, particularly to the right of religious freedom and choice of religion.
Stop your missionary activities in Israel. Stop it.
This evangelical Christian mission gives free food to poor Orthodox Jews in Jerusalem, and the indigents line up to accept.
Some of Israel's best friends around the world come from the Bible-believing Christian communities. And if it is seen as though Israel or the government is opposing the very people who have been the best friends of Israel, then perhaps support could wax cold.
This legislation has already cleared its first parliamentary hurdle. Prime Minister Netanyahu strongly opposes it, but some fear it could pass over his objections, especially if Orthodox Jews decide to engage in muscle flexing. Rabbi David Rosen opposes the bill, but he says democracy does not have deep roots in Israel.
We're dealing with a society that is very fragile in terms of its own self-confidence and of its ability to function within a modern democratic world. And therefore, you have to take that into consideration.
What is being waged here is a cultural clash that opens centuries-old wounds between Jews and Christians. It is a struggle for souls, and this time the Christians do not have the upper hand. Walter Rogers, CNN, Jerusalem.
A child's bright laughter fills the air. Your Werther's is his Werther's too. So creamy golden, just plain good. Werther's and that feeling that you never will forget. When one who loves you says to you, you're someone very special too.
If bugs are taking over your house, don't do it yourself. Call 1-800-TERMINIX. We can control any bug problem, and nobody offers a better money-back guarantee. Call now, before things get carried away. Nobody bugs bugs like Terminix.
He flew to 17 cities in 3 weeks. Flew to the top of the ladder. Flew his whole family to Hawaii for free. Who's he sleeping with? Weston. Choose your travel partner wisely. Call 1-800-WESTON-1.
Get the new Encore movie networks, and you can choose from 7 premium movie channels, each with a different theme. We have a channel that shows only Westerns. We've got an action channel, all action, 24 hours a day. And a spine-tingling mystery channel, all in digital picture and sound. So call your cable operator. Satellite dish owners call 1-800-DIRECTV or 1-800-PRIME-STAR. The new Encore movie networks, just what you're in the mood for.
A battle of wills, a test of faith, and an unlikely hero. Richard Gere, Deborah Winger, and Louis Gossett Jr. in a Superstation premiere. An Officer and a Gentleman, 8 Eastern, Sunday night, only on the Superstation.
Well, here's one from our Big and Odd file. If you don't believe there is a Bigfoot, check this out. It's the Colossus, 5 feet long and weighing 150 pounds. That's part of it. The big Oxford, there it is.
It's Michael Jordan's, isn't it?
It's Michael Jordan's, not quite. The big Oxford got a good shine just before going on display at Seattle's Giant Shoe Museum. Just in case you didn't know they had one of those. The museum opened yesterday and it showcases hundreds, of really big shoes. And if you think that's kind of fishy, look at this. It's a 95-pound catfish caught recently in Iowa. 95 pounds. An aquarium